song afterwards. Anyway, hey everybody, welcome back to the 81st episode of Taps and Patience. This is the second time I've done the intro, and both times I missed the music button when I went to press the music button. I am AJ with Audacity Micro, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. I think this is the first time we've ever redone an intro.
I think you're right.
It was due to technical difficulties. It wasn't due to the intro being terrible, which it was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is the first time I think we've ever redone anything.
No, it was. So how we doing?
Okay. I've got some long cycle parts that I'm running right now that are due tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm probably going to try to sneak in like 2 more cycles tonight. And so that it'll be easy to get them finished up and shipped in time tomorrow, so I don't have to drive 45 minutes to the airport. Well, an hour and 20 minutes to the airport. But otherwise, they're going pretty smoothly. There's a FedEx location right next to the airport, and that location is open until 10:30. The one up here is open until 7:30. So if I'm late, I get a couple extra hours by running down to the airport. Which I did far too much last month, but
oh, good.
Other than that, I've quoted a bunch of work of non-zometry work, and
that's good.
If all of those POs come back, I'm so screwed. But also, I'll have a lot of money. So
there you go. Enough for another machine.
If they both come back, there is a guy selling a cheap mini mill, and I may just go pick it up.
Seriously?
So, I mean, probably not, but I would consider it. So,
we got a not cheap Tormach for sale.
Dude, have you been watching the used Tormach market?
I haven't. I probably should.
The floor is falling out of it.
Oh, really?
I saw.
Go ahead.
I saw a used 1100 MX with an ATC for $20K.
Really?
Whereas I sold mine 2 months ago for $27K.
Oh my.
Granted, I had a lot more tooling and I had the micro arc with mine, so maybe this is fair because his didn't come with any tooling or fixtures. But
yeah.
But a month ago, that same Tormach would have been $25,000.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's one for $27, a fully loaded 770 MX.
So. Yeah, they're not going to get that. Yeah, ever since they announced the 1500, I've just been watching the used Tormach prices collapse, which is awesome for people just getting started. Used Tormachs have been overpriced for a long time.
Yeah, it sucks for me.
But it sucks for you.
I missed it by a couple weeks.
Buy high, sell low.
Yeah. But that's all right. We need to get rid of that thing. It's been a good machine, but like I said, we need to move on to the next stage, and that involves getting a bigger, better machine to replace that one.
Yep.
But we're still using it, and it's still producing great parts. It's just slow, and you have to babysit it more.
Mm-hmm.
So, and dialing things in, it's so easy to dial things in on the Haas compared to the Tormach, because I dial it in by 1 thou, I get 1 thou. It's 1-to-1 basically.
Yeah,
so,
that is a great feeling.
So it's it might only take me one part making tweaks to get everything dialed in. Maybe 2 if I overshoot it or something, which almost never happens. But yeah, anyways, I love it. It's awesome. I did a zometry job today, and it was the type of job that made me just absolutely love this new machine so much. It was a plastic job. It was not a 5-axis job, but I did it on the 5-axis because it made it a lot easier.
Yep.
Because it had some tapped holes on the side, and it had a taper feature on it. It was a small spot, but being able to just tilt and then just hit it was just awesome. It was a small little Delrin part that was probably 2 inches by 1 inch by 1 inch cube, or rectangle approximately. And my cycle time on it was about 7 minutes from start to finish.
Nice.
And they were just coming off beautifully. And I had to run 12 of them or 15 of them, something like that.
Did
But it
you
was,
have a second op, or was it a
yes,
one
just
and
to take
done?
the hat off.
Okay.
So the second op was just stick it in a vise, take off the top material, and chamfer. So,
Nice.
um, and then I got another job I'm setting up and running right now. After that one, that's a stainless part for a different customer that's not Xometry, and it's a 20-piece run. And it's a job that I've actually done on the Tormach previously, which actually I think I have. Let me look up here real quick. I'm gonna deviate ever so slightly because wanted to check this, but I hadn't. So my cycle time on the Haas is around 14 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and according to Fusion, my cycle time on the other machine, on the Tormach, let me regenerate everything real quick. Do do do. Come on. It was like much longer. It was 6 ops before, and now I'm doing
Gosh.
it in 2.
Wow. Yeah.
So, huge savings in terms of just like how much you have to handle the part, and the fact that
Yep.
like every time I hit cycle start, I'm getting a completed part. So it's just really hard to argue with that.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Okay. So, one. Ooh. Can you
Fusion on the
pause this a second?
podcast.
Can you pause this?
Zoom.
All right. And so my previous machining time was 35 minutes.
What was it
So
originally?
it was originally 35 minutes, and I'm doing it in about 14 now.
Nice. Without
So
handling it 6 times as well.
without handling it 6 times. Yeah. And that's not including the 6 operations of, because it got hit on every side basically.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's huge. Super happy about that.
Nice.
And it's days like today that make me just really love that machine. But it also, I had this thought while I was working on the machine today. I got this machine that's got these it's 40 by 26 on the table, and today I've been running parts that are like 2 inches, three
Yeah.
inches long. It's just like, oh my goodness, like this machine is so overkill for these parts, which is fine. I mean, as we get more machines, I'll have machines that like this part will be a better fit for, so I can run bigger parts on this machine. But it just kind of made me smile and laugh a little bit that I'm running these tiny parts on this big machine. So, but as someone said, you can run a small part on a big machine, but you can't run a big part on a small machine. So,
Yep.
um, much rather this way than the other, because I had the Tormach for a while, and there was a lot of parts that I couldn't run on that I've been running on the bigger machine. So, anyways, that's kind of what I've been up to this week. I've been really banging out a lot of jobs. Like yesterday and Monday, I did like 8 different parts. It was like a part an hour.
Okay.
Um, on the machine, and that's programming, setting it up, running it, and going to the next one. So that's
Nice.
setting up tooling. That's getting it set up in the vices. That's getting it probed. That's everything. It averaged out to about an hour apart. Some took longer, some took less, but the average was about that. And so, like, getting that workflow in and kind of getting into a groove of things is feeling really good. I'm not having to set up as many tools. I'm still having to set up about 1 or 2 tools per job. But we've got enough tool holders now in rotation that most of the common things have a home at this point. So, um, yeah. So, anyways, that's my week, and then I can talk about my trip down to the Boombastic event. But you got anything else you want to talk about before I do that?
I have a couple longer topics that I'd like to talk about, but in terms of just like week recap, I I was sitting here thinking like, what parts did I make last week? And I couldn't remember making any of them, but I pulled up Xometry, and apparently I took finished 4 Xometry jobs last week. Nothing too exciting. I did kind of a lot of pseudo lathe parts where I stuck a
Mm-hmm.
cylinder up in my 4-jaw chuck and then used a um, not a slitting saw, a key seat cutter to kind of spiral my way down them.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of kind of undercuts on those and some kind of funky cam, but overall they were, just kind of piece of cake parts. I did some high precision plastic parts that were, holding some plus or minus one tolerances in Delrin, so that's always fun. And I finished up the uh, Kickstarter cube stands. So we had all the
Ooh.
cubes made, but we needed to
Mm-hmm.
make the cube stands. And so Scott and I finished up the machining and the powder coating, and then Scott and I shipped the rest of them. So that Kickstarter is 100% fulfilled, at least for everybody who filled out their survey. And then Scott has all the remaining pieces for people who haven't filled out their survey. So that's done and not hanging over me anymore. Finally.
Awesome.
And other than that, I basically just have like a million things on the near horizon.
Yeah.
I feel like over the last 2 weeks I haven't had much cash flow because everything has been like on the near horizon.
Mm.
I'm gonna finish up this job tomorrow. That's like a $1,500 job. Like 3 days after that, I have like a $2,000 job. And then right now, I've sent quotes out in the past 3 days for about $9,000 of work, which is a lot for me. Plus, we haven't talked about this publicly yet. I haven't technically signed the contract yet, but it's all but a done deal where I will be recording some Fusion classes for one of the Fusion resellers, not DSI. Well, I don't know. I'll say their name once I sign the contract.
Mm-hmm.
But that'll give me it's a pretty reasonable lump of money for the time that I'll be recording. Um, Probably slightly less than I make machining, but I can do it while the machine is running,
Yeah.
which is nice. So I'll be making some Fusion classes for them, and I'll give them the full plug once the contract is actually signed. But that's looking like it might be an ongoing thing for the next 4 or 5 months, and it can actually be a pretty significant portion of my income. So that's why I have the green screen behind me. I was doing some lighting and audio tests. I'm going to record. I keep saying I'm going to do this video. I'm going to record a video on container method fusion templates,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll be kind of my test bed for how I record and edit for that class.
Gotcha.
But at this rate, if all of this stuff comes, let's assume that I get paid for all of this stuff this month, which some of it will probably I'll receive the check next month. But if I get it all this month, it will be double what I did last month and every other month this year. So
That's awesome.
it will be
Congratulations.
it's big. And basically everything on the horizon, all the work I have is generally fairly low in material cost. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
work. So really high margin stuff. And the fusion
That's
class is, of
awesome.
course, basically 100% margin, just my time. So I'm sure, there's like the three big things on the horizon. I'm sure all three of them are not going to come together. And I kind of hope not, because I'm not sure I'll have time to do all three. But if I get at least one of the big jobs plus the class, I'll be pretty well set.
Yep. Speaking of finances, it got me thinking about something that um, we're actually running low on our finances right now because we have a customer that hasn't paid.
Oh,
Yeah, so we got to get that figured out. We got it's over a five figure. Well, it's a 5 figure check they need to write us, and it's adding up because it's a bunch of small jobs that they just haven't done, but it's added up to a lot, and so they just lost all the invoices. Apparently, Weston's
mm.
been chasing them down, trying to figure it out, and we've got a pretty big bill due next week, and it's like
is
we kind of need that money.
is this a customer you've worked with before?
Yeah, it's a really good customer we've worked in the past. They've never missed a date before
Okay.
this. So, but they did just change systems this year, and so but they said they haven't seen received any of our emails, but Weston, like we go through QuickBooks, and QuickBooks sends out the original invoice, sends out a reminder at 2 weeks, a reminder at 3 weeks, and then a reminder on and then like a reminder between like halfway through week 3, and then it's due today reminder on the or and then another one on week 4, and then at the end of the week 4 it's like it's due today. So it's like a bunch of emails, and we get all the same reminders that they do, so I've seen them come
Mhm.
in, and it's just like, okay, you guys should have seen that. If you
Yeah.
didn't, then there's something. And not only that, but because it's through QuickBooks, Weston can see how many people have viewed it. And
Oh,
so, like,
really?
people have been viewing it. So it's like someone there has looked at this and put eyeballs on this, because we've got notifications that you have. Because I don't think it sends out I don't think it sends out all the reminders if they haven't viewed it. Like if they view it, it like skips a couple of them
Hmm.
or something. I don't know, but anyways, it's yeah, it's annoying, but it's going to
Well,
put a
I'm
little bit of a strain. Go ahead.
if they're a good customer, like they're gonna pay.
Yeah, yeah.
It
I have no doubt they are.
either it is some technical glitch or like some personnel glitch, or maybe they're just short on cash. Like even big companies end up short on cash.
I really hope they're not, because right now they have a large portion of our outstanding invoices currently,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's over a month's worth of cash that they have or that we're waiting on. So,
Yep. Take some
anyways,
zometry work.
I have been. So, we've actually taken 2 jobs today, and one of them's actually a repeat job that we've gotten the same
Ooh,
part 3 times.
nice. Those are the best ones.
And what's funny is the third time we got it, it had a whole bunch of other parts with it. So
Hmm.
it's like 70 parts total, or no, 70 parts and like 5 types or 6 types, something like that. And we had all the material in stock, which was awesome.
That is
So
nice.
like that's the biggest thing with Xometry, that at least when you're doing bigger pieces, you can't buy material on McMaster and make a lot of money. But the turnaround on some of this stuff is so fast that it's really hard to get material in and get the job done on time.
Mm-hmm.
And so this just happened to be one that we had enough aluminum and other materials on hand, which it's mostly an aluminum job with a little bit of steel. But ironically, we had enough steel left over, because they're like, it's all aluminum except for the one part that we've done before, which was steel. And we have that steel in stock from when we did the jobs previously, because we had some offcut pieces, and they add up to be enough to, I think, do that one where we don't have to order anything. So kind of cool.
Yep.
But anyways, yeah, finances. There was something else you were going to jump to after this, and I jumped in. Or was there something else I was thinking of?
Was it talking about our Patreons?
Sure.
So, everybody, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/taps and patience. There's like a 45% chance there's a link in the description to it. Some of our Patreons include Chris Zadrick from Zadrick Precision, Design the Everything, which very much confused me when I saw that notification. Oh, by the way, we have a new Patreon, Design the Everything, which is not me. That would be Scott. So thank you, Scott. EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Jake Brownson, Jamie from JSpec Engineering, Simon, Chris at Thoughtbomb Design, and we also have those are all the Patreon members at the $10 a month tier. They get their name read off. We also have several members at the $4 a month tier. I just lost my monitor that showed the Patreon information. I guess that was all the names though, so that works out. I've lost both monitors. I don't know if you're still there, Harrison.
Yeah,
I can't.
I'm still here.
I can't. Hold on.
Okay.
I can't pause the recording. I know
Okay.
it happened.
Well, while AJ's doing that, I guess the other thing that I was going to think of is that I did have a lot of people who reached out last time on the stainless part that I did, that I was complaining about my feeds and speeds and whatnot.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay. So whenever you're done with that, I'm gonna go through some of the comments that I've gotten back from that, because there's a lot of good stuff in here that I want to share with everyone who listens.
For those of you that are wondering, I kicked the power strip that my monitors were plugged into, and both the power adapters fell out one after the other.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I have some Patreon Q&As, which all Patreons get to, at any tier, get to contribute to, by the way. So y'all should sign up for it. So you should do your thing first, and then we'll get into the Q&A. And then I have
Okay,
a
was there
main
anything else with the
topic.
Patreons?
Just the Q&A.
Oh, okay. So, oh no, I don't want to do that. Go back. So one of the things I got from MamaBot, it's his Instagram profile
Sorry,
name.
Mama Bot, but I'm laughing
Yeah,
at your name.
but he mentioned that thermal shock from running coolant could be the problem, which it is the problem whenever we run square bar on our lathe. Is that if you're taking an interrupted cut where you're going in and out, that'll cause thermal shock and it'll chip the inserts way faster. And so my thoughts are on that with the larger diameter tooling and the slower RPM, it's going hot, cold a lot more because it's allowing it to
Yeah.
cool down more. And sometimes, as he mentions in here, was that if you sometimes the different coatings you have, they need a certain amount of heat for them to actually activate and protect your tool. And so if they're getting too cold and then they're thermal shocking to hot, that might be causing problems, which makes complete sense. Which makes sense why your smaller tools, which are running at higher RPM and just staying
Yep.
in that heat zone, are fine. Although with stainless, heat usually causes things to work harden. See here, there's a couple other one that I'm trying to find.
There was a bunch of comments on YouTube.
Oh, well, I didn't read the comments on YouTube. I should. Man, I've gotten so many different. Okay,
There, I can summarize the comments on YouTube.
okay, go
Use
for it.
more coolant, use less coolant, take a deeper depth of cut, take a shallower depth of cut, feed faster, feed slower. I mean, I'm sorry,
Yep.
YouTube guys, we love you, but basically the comments were just all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's basically what I'm gonna say from the comments that I've gotten personally. It's basically along those lines. One guy said, get a shorter length tool to where you're not using as much where you have more rigidity and less vibration. Tool holders is what one guy said, because that was a Weldon tool holder. And so he
Oh.
said, go into a hydraulic or shrink fit. Well, not shrink fit, but like a hydraulic or something with more mass
Mm-hmm.
to vibration dampen would help. Anyways, lots of good comments. What ended up happening, what I ended up doing personally, was I ran through all of my larger tooling and I went down to my 3/8 tool that I've been using from Haas, and I dropped my SFM down to around, I don't remember if I think it was around 500 or 450, somewhere in that range. And my final cycle time ended up around the 17 to 18 minute mark is what I was able to get it back down to. The highest I was up to was around 24 minutes, 25 minutes, I think. And I ended up getting all the parts done it took about a half a day longer than I was planning.
Okay.
Or a little longer, maybe a 3/4 of a day longer than I was planning. I was planning on it taking around 2 days, and it ended up taking about 2.5, 2 3/4 days. And so, thankfully, I got it all done in time for the Boombastic event, and there was a couple parts I needed to work in as well. Um, but it was cutting it really close, and it was quite stressful. Which brings on the Boombastic event. Okay, I gotta tell a funny story. So, one of the guys who listens to his podcast, I'm gonna pull up his name real quick. Uh, James, I think is who it is. Yeah, I'm gonna go with James. I'm sorry if yeah,
Sorry if not James.
sorry if not James. James, he was a podcast listener and he was down there at the event, and I made an Instagram post, hey, what am I doing at Titans of CNC kind of a deal, and he saw that and he was at the event, And so I was going around and I'm geeking out meeting all the Titan guys. It's like, my, U2 stardom, going over meeting and geeking out with all those guys. And all of a sudden I hear behind me, hey, I think that's Harrison. That's Harrison. I'm going to go say hi and get a photo. And I'm just like, what is going on? So anyways, that's the first time I've ever met a fan in a public setting like that. Or actually, it's the first time I've met a fan ever of like, because I've never had a fan. And so it was just like it was so weird. It was cool though. It was honestly, I wish I could have hung out with that guy. We talked some. He's messaged me on Instagram some, and it was cool to meet him in person. And we went around the event some. I feel a little bit bad that I didn't spend as much time with him because I was also geeking out and trying to run around and see everything at the same time.
Yep.
But it was a lot of fun talking to him. And actually, another person I saw there was the guy from Practical Machinist, the
Oh, really?
Canadian.
Okay.
Yeah, he is so tall. I look like a kid next to him. Like he's like 6'7" or something. I'm like
Yeah.
looking up at him like, hi. Anyways, it was a lot of fun. I saw a lot of people, and it was cool to meet all the Titan guys. They were all like all of Titan's guys were awesome to talk to. I went over and got onto Barry a couple times while he was cutting things. Anyone who watches his videos, it was pretty funny. He was setting up to run a part, and he's like, "All right, I'm ready to go, guys." And I was like, "Are you gonna crash it?" And he turns around and says, "Don't do that to me, man." It was great. But anyways, it was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. One thing that was kind of cool though is in the Swiss area, a lot of the parts that they've done videos on, they were running,
Hmm.
and you could take some of those parts with you. I don't know
Oh,
if I
cool.
don't know if everyone knew that, but they were running parts and people were taking them. And I was talking to the guy that was running the Swiss booth, and I forget the name of the Titan guy that was running it, but he was like, "Oh yeah, just grab those." He's like, "We're not making them for anyone, so just take them and hang on to them." And it was kind of cool. So I went back to one of the guys was running titanium Christmas trees, and
Hmm.
he had a couple sitting up there. And I was like, "Hey, the Swiss Boost guys was giving away his parts. Are you giving away these?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "Dang it, I want one of those."
Yeah.
But he was doing a titanium Christmas tree on a 5-axis, which was pretty cool. So, anyways, I had so much fun going to the event. I had a buddy with me who runs a more traditional machine shop that's been in business for like 90 years, and he's a third generation. And I think his mind was blown. He is honestly the perfect demographic that, like, I think when Titan's doing his videos, he gets a lot of flack from a lot of people because I think you have the younger generation that's coming in and they don't really have that big machining background of like running things with high speed steel and whatnot. And they just they pick up fusion or whatever and they just hit the ground running, and it's just not that big of a deal. And so what Titan's showing might not have as big of an effect on those guys. But walking around with this guy who's third generation, who on our way down we were talking because this was when I was struggling with that stainless steel part. I was asking him, I was like, "Man, when you're running stainless, what type of SFM are you running on your parts?" And he was like, 30. I was like, he's like, "What are you running?" And I was like, 60. And he's like, 60? Oh yeah, that makes sense. About double. I was like, sorry, I meant to say 600. And he's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was hilarious. And so actually one of the stainless parts I'm running today, I was running 650 SFM because it was 303. And so I was
Gosh.
pushing it a little bit harder. And
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. I had 200 inches a minute feed rate in stainless. It looked like I was running aluminum, like with how fast it was going around. It was fun. Anyways, had a lot of fun at the event, and it was cool to kind of see his perspective on the event as someone who has grown up being taught by old machinists. And so I think it honestly scared him a little bit, which
Hmm.
needed to happen because Their shop just needs to be modernized a little bit. Like they have awesome machines, but they don't have any sort of CAM package or CAD package. Like
Oh gosh, yeah.
they program everything on the machines. Like the idea of chamfering your parts on the machine like blew their mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the type of shop that definitely like is a great like eye opener for them to see Titan stuff. So and there's probably more shops like that than like us, if I had to guess. Although for how long, I don't know. That's definitely going to change.
Yep,
So,
it is changing.
and fast, and that's the thing that I tried to explain to him because he was a little bit scared, and because we had a couple conversations in the car, and the main point I tried to tell him was, it's not that the way they did things was wrong. It's just that the way they did things in the past has now become uncompetitive today, and they need to change or they're going to get left behind. Because he
Mhm.
was getting upset that no one was like no one was jumping on board with the changes he's been trying to implement, regardless of what he saw. He's been trying to make changes for years, but he's been trying to make baby steps. Get someone in there to do a little bit of CAD, CAM work. A programmer part time or something. Try to get his guys interested in going and learning how to use some other things, and they're comfortable with where they're at, and so he's been frustrated with all that, and it's just kind of shaking him up a little bit, which is good. I hope he holds on to that and takes it to heart and pushes forward.
Yep.
So what else you got?
Patreon Q&A.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, let's
All
go
right,
for it.
so softball first. EJ, Nocturnal Welding. What other jobs have you guys done? How long have you been machining? He says,
Oh,
I'll share first. I was an electrician, commercial HVAC. Started welding 10 years ago and then started machining 1 year ago. So welder for 9 years, machinist for one.
why don't you take this one and I'll take after you.
By trade, I am or by education, not by trade. By education, I am an engineer. I went to Purdue for mechanical engineering, actually, technically mechanical engineering technology, which is a little bit more hands on and manufacturing based. And then I got a job at a company that made big old huge uh, high volume low pressure air compressors. To this day, one of the units I designed is still blowing bubbles and poop in Guam.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked at a sheet metal shop that did checkout stand equipment. So like if you go to the grocery store and there's like a thing holding up your credit card reader or the monitor the cashier is using, I designed and oversaw the production of those. That company now is unfortunately out of business, but if you go to a Walmart, a Meijer, a Whole Foods, Dollar General, Dollar Tree, AutoZone, you're using either something that I oversaw the production of or something that I designed myself. So
Nice. Well, you got anything else you want to add?
when I was in college, I worked for Chick-fil-A. They helped pay for my school. I worked for Chick-fil-A for a number of years. As I started off in a catering management position with them, and then I moved to managing the kitchen, and then I moved to doing maintenance specifically. And at various times, I was a corporate employee and or just a local store employee.
So I'll start from the beginning. My first job was in a recycling plant, and then that was in high school. And then I worked at McKee Foods in like four different capacities, um, starting all the way up and working my way up. When I got into university, I'm a mechanical engineer as well, double major. I'm actually mechanical and electrical, although I haven't
You
done much with
really
the electrical. Yeah.
overachiever.
Well, I was having too much fun. So I'm one of those weird people that actually enjoys school on some level. Like if you give me like English or history, I will want to shoot myself, but the engineering stuff I really enjoyed. I
Did
find
you
out. Go
Did you
ahead.
take any loans to get through school, or did you have
I did.
savings and or
I
family
did
help?
not. I did not.
Okay.
So I had scholarships and my own funding, and then some help from family.
Okay.
So
Oh,
yeah.
I never said I was Army too, which paid for some of school. Chick-fil-A paid for some of school. My parents helped a little bit, and I worked. So I didn't have any loans either.
And then when I was in school and university, I had some local jobs, and then I had some internships. Of note, I did an internship at McKee. I did a couple different internships for software companies, which is where I found
Hmm.
out that if I had to sit in front of a computer and write code all day, I'd want to shoot myself in the face. Mainly, like, I love coding, but I hate coding for like a website or like an application.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite classes in university were ones where I would write code and it'd make an LED blink or a servo move or read in values from a sensor. Like anything that would like I do something on the computer and something happens in the real world. Man, that is my favorite type of programming. If it's I'm writing a program and then it does something in a SQL database somewhere and like you get a cool little like check mark that says okay that worked. It's like cool, shoot me now. Like this is so boring. So, anyways, I did some internships with that. My coolest internship that I did that I'm gonna brag about a little bit was I did an internship at Los Alamos National Laboratory,
Oh, that's cool.
and I had to get a security clearance. Well, I had to get approved, and I didn't have clearance whenever I went, so I had to have an escort the entire time I was on the
Hmm.
premises. I was it's kind of a brag because but it's also kind of not. The brag part is the security clearance side because Los Alamos has something in the neighborhood of 1,500 interns a year, so it's a lot. But I actually got to go behind the fence, and I got someone that was assigned to me to follow me around, and they did follow me around to the shitter because they couldn't let me out of their sight. But I worked at the DART facility, which is DARHT, and it was a machine that used two electron beams at 90-degree angles to create X-rays of explosions. And what they would do is they have these domes that were like 10 foot in diameter, and they would set off small nuclear devices in those domes, and they would take X-ray images of them, and then they would take those images and they would compare them to the supercomputer of what they predicted would happen, and that's
Hmm.
how they made sure their supercomputer was accurate. And so while I was there, it was pretty wild because at the DART facility, they used to do open air testing where they would set off small nuclear devices and just let it go out into the atmosphere. But because of EPA and whatnot, all that changed, which it should have. But because of that, if you're at the facility, you cannot step off the road into the dirt because they haven't swept those areas, and there's a chance you could step on like some radioactive material and die. And
Lovely.
so like it was pretty cool. I I don't know how much of it I can actually talk about. The only thing I can say is I there was a device on that actually created the X-rays, and I worked on a redesign for that.
Hmm.
And I got offered a job out there, and I actually went through and got all my security clearance for it, and I ended up turning it down. But they interviewed like 60 people for me to get that clearance. It was pretty wild. It was funny because one of my previous employers, he he was very dramatic about it because he runs a small shop here in town, and they had the like the straight up FBI agent, black suit and tie, doesn't look like he has a humorous bone in his body, and like super serious. And he like rolled up into his shop, flipped out his badge, and says, "I'm with the FBI. I need to talk to so and so." And like the guy like crapped his pants. But anyways, it was a lot of fun. So anyways, had a lot of fun with that. That's my most notable thing. After that, I worked as a mechanical engineer at a local company for about 5 years, and we specialized in equipment for food equipment. So it was all sheet metal design, and we did conveyors, tanks, specialty things. mixers, platforms, chutes, all sorts of stuff. And did that for about 5 years. And as much fun as I had at that company, it was also one of the most stressful jobs. It gave me an ulcer at one point. And it was at that job. I've always known I wanted to start my own company. In fact, when I got hired on, I told them from day one that was going to be one of my goals. And was that I was going to eventually start my own company, and they kind of laughed at me. But jokes on them. I quit and started up a machine shop, and so far I'm still going. So maybe they will laugh at me ultimately, but to date I'm still going. So that's how I did this.
How long from graduating college to starting your own business for you?
5 years.
5 years? Oh,
Because
okay.
because I got out, I took that job straight out of college, and then I did that for about 5 years, and then I started up this.
I'm older than you, right? Are you older than me?
I turned 32 this year,
Am I 31 or 32? I think I'm 31 turning 32.
September.
Yeah.
That's me. Are you
Oh,
September
that's
too?
me. Yeah.
September 92?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay,
I'm turning 32.
so my guess is you're going to be older than me. I'm September 30th.
Yes, on September 9th.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're going to be older than me just a little bit.
I
One of my good friends is 2 days older than me.
My wife is exactly 1 week older than me, which is why I don't bother remembering how old I am, because I know that she'll always be able to tell me because it's her age.
Yep.
I have
Nice.
outsourced that bit of my memory.
So, yeah.
Anyway, Jamie from JSpec Engineering asks, how do you deal with customers that have a million questions about non-reoccurring engineering fees and why one-off pieces cost so much or one-off jobs cost so much?
So, those kind of go together in my world.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly haven't done much contract engineering work, and the contract engineering work that I have done, I've usually bid low on, just because the project ended up getting strung out, and there ended up being a whole lot of change orders from the customer, and they just expected me to change order them for them, and it was fine. So I haven't really had that. But for the high price, I would say my regular customers understand it. My regular large customers, they'll be like, oh, if I'm buying one customer or one part, I might as well buy five because they'll be about the same price.
Yep.
Which is true. And that's just machining. Like, anyone who doesn't understand that, which is going to be all of my walk-ins. I have a lot of walk-ins of people that'll be like, oh yeah, you've already bought that big machine. Don't you just need to go over and go boop 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 and then drill this hole? And it's like, no, it's not that easy. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because like that's taking away my time from running jobs that I'm, like the hardest thing for me is when someone comes up and says, hey, I have this busted part that I need you to stick in your machine and fixture and drill out a hole, or, do something like this. Like, I'm making stuff from scratch. The type of work that those type of people bring me, that's stuff that needs to be done on like a Bridgeport or not a CNC machine, because then you can just drive it over, line it up, and just drill it out or whatever. Like on my machine, I need to probe it. I need to, you can do conversational on the machine, but I've never done it, and that's not what I'm comfortable with or fast at. So for me, I got to go draw it up in CAD and then create a program for it in Fusion, and then stick it over on the machine and probe it and fixture it, and then do whatever they want to do. And it's much easier if I'm doing that from scratch than it is to start with a pre-existing part. And so I usually try to turn away that type of work, or just tell them, hey, it's going to be expensive. And a lot of people will come to me with dumb stuff like, hey, there's this thing on Amazon that I want to buy, and
But
it's
it's too
20
expensive.
bucks. It's 20 bucks. Can you do it for 10? No, I can't. So anyways, I usually just try to send people like that packing. The only time that I will tell people that I can do it, I said, if it doesn't exist, or that's pretty much it. If it doesn't exist, like if you can go buy it, buy it. It'll be 10 times cheaper than if I can do it. The only exception, I guess, would be is if one, it doesn't exist, or two, you need me to modify it in some way, and it's cheaper for me to buy something and then modify it than make it from scratch. Yeah, that's the other thing I'll do. But anyways, what about you?
This really isn't a problem that I've had to deal with because like I do a bunch of zometry work and I'm just now starting to get quotes out to the real world. Not that zometry isn't real, but it doesn't feel real. So I would say from my limited, like I don't have a direct like this is how you deal with them, but what I would say is read the pumpkin plan and don't be afraid to fire bad customers. I think the statistic that he throws out in the pumpkin plans, like your top 20% of customers will provide you with like
80%.
120% of your revenue, and the
Yeah.
bottom percentage of your customer or the bottom 20% will cost you like 40% of your revenue or just something like that. So, I mean, don't don't be afraid to just kind of be like, yeah, this is the way it is. And if you don't like it, like tough, there's Joe down the street with his Bridgeport.
Yeah.
Like, go to Joe.
Yeah. I have a lot of people that get sent our way from other shops in the area. And to be fair, if I'm slow, I've taken on that kind of work to fill
Mm-hmm.
in and to grow my experience. But I'm getting to the point where I'm going to have to start cutting things off. And, for friends and family, I don't mind doing some things, but they got to understand that if they're not paying customers or if they want it cheap, they're not going to get it fast. And that's the biggest thing is I've got to have my time is worth something now, and that means I've got to be very careful with how I spend it in the day. If I had a bunch of employees and I had more time on my hand where I could fit some of that stuff in, maybe that equation changes. But today, the only time I'm earning money is if I'm running things. And it's not, especially with this new machine and the new payments, I can't justify, taking half a day to fiddle fart around and do things that aren't pushing the needle. And as I will always try to make time for people I know. But if I don't know you, if you've just heard from a friend of a friend of a friend and you want a favor, it's I'm gonna send you packing. Like unless money is no object, which I've had people that come in, they're like, hey, you got this old farmer and he needs something, and he'll spend what it needs to be to get fixed and without batting an eye. And in those instances, yeah, I'm happy to help, because if someone is truly in need and and I am their best option, I will go out of my way and try to make that work. It's the people that come in that want a favor or want it for free, or you know want to complain about the price, that yeah, they get frustrating. And honestly, my biggest annoyance is I have a customer who I do barrel threading for, and we've done a dozen or two barrels for him, and every time he comes in he complains about the price, and I'm about to tell him to just take a hike, because every time he comes in he's like, man, I keep feeling like you're raising the price. And we raised it once, so we did like a dozen barrels for him. Then we told him, hey, next time you come in we're raising the price, and we gave him a sheet. And then we've stuck to that price ever since then, and he won't. Every time he comes in he wants to complain about it, and it's just like, listen, the price is the price. We've given you the sheet, we've given you a notice, and we've given it to everyone, and you're the only one that has a problem. And he's like, well, I'm trying to do you guys a favor and help you out, and it's his work isn't doing anything. It's not helping us.
Yep.
So, anyways, if you
One
brought
thing
us
people
like
don't
go ahead.
I was gonna say one thing customers don't realize a lot of the time is they're like, okay, hey, you're gonna make like $50 an hour making this thing for me. Like that's $50 an hour you wouldn't have otherwise. What they don't understand is with other work you might be making 100 or 200 or $500 an hour. And like
Mm-hmm.
opportunity cost is just so hard for humans to understand in general. It is particularly difficult for somebody who's not the person suffering from the opportunity cost to understand.
Yeah. Well, that's the same guy who makes comments like, well, this shouldn't cost you that much. That machine over there does all the work. All you have to do is hit a few buttons, and
All
it,
you got
and,
to
and it's
do
like
is
it's like, really? So. anyways, he's my most difficult guy, and I dread every time he calls because he never has easy gun work. It's,
Pumpkin
the
Planum.
barrel threading that he brings in, it's always, you know, really oddball stuff, family heirlooms that he wants to
Oh,
pay pennies for. And it's like, really? Like, I need to be extra careful because this is some family heirloom of this like priceless gun. And then you're complaining because I've raised my price by $10 or $20 or whatever, not that much. And it's like, shove it.
Pumpkin Planum.
You're no longer welcome.
All right,
So,
on the quoting train, I have a question for you. So
okay.
I've been doing some like actual quotes for actual people, like I've said recently. I've been building out my quoting spreadsheet, and I ran into something that I don't really know how to quote for, and I wanted to pick your
Okay.
brain.
Go
And
for it.
that is tight tolerance features. How do
Okay.
you quote for tight tolerance features?
So, the way I quote tight tolerance features is I will figure out how much time it should take to run that part. And then I have a margin that I adjust based on the complexity of the features on that part. So, for example, my standard margin is around 10 to 15%. If it has one, now, this margin is a little bit different than what you're thinking. This is just how it is worded on my Excel sheet. Like there's a total margin, which is a different value, but this is a margin that I add up on my labor. So this
Mm-hmm.
is an extra margin. This is my labor margin, basically. Your material margin and your machine margin, and like there's a lot of other margins that are going into this. This is just the labor portion of it, and I will usually adjust that for, depending on the complexity, anywhere from an extra 5% to an extra 20%, depending on how complex all those features add up. And so it basically, I quote it the same way as if it was a not a tight part, and then I add that extra margin in there to cover the complexity of getting it set up. Because usually, at least on the new machine, once I've got it dialed in and I've spent that time, it usually pumps out parts pretty consistently from then on. And so that margin is just to cover the extra time that it takes to get to that point.
Okay, so basically, you just have like a windage factor.
But yeah, more or less.
Okay, yeah, I already have a risk factor in there, which actually I kind of like the idea of having a separate like materials risk versus labor risk
That's
factor. That's
basically how
actually
I've
a
got it
really
broke
good
down.
idea.
Is I have two different margins I can play with. One's on the material side and one's on the labor side. And that one, the one whenever I have complexity, I usually do it just on the labor side because I usually have extra material built in on that side. Like I don't usually affect the margin of my material, but I usually will, quote like 5% extra material or something like that. Depending on the size and the lot. If I'm doing 100 parts of a tight tolerance feature, one or two extra parts of material isn't that much. But if I'm doing, one really tight part, then I might not charge them a full stick, but I'll charge, or like a full second piece, but maybe I'll charge them half of a second piece if I use it or not.
Yeah.
Just so it's there, so it averages out in the wash. And then on the labor side, I'll just bump up my labor margin a little bit for those tighter features.
That makes sense. Yeah, I quoted two jobs recently, a bunch of parts between the two jobs, but two jobs, one of which was a low volume with lots of high precision tolerances. Basically, the whole part was plus or minus one or plus or minus two.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was like, I don't know, as long as it fits, it's fine.
Yeah.
So I just quoted that at my shop plus or minus three. But it was like, well, I don't know. How do I compensate for this? And how do I, more importantly, this is what I was worried about, is how do I keep it consistent in the long run? Because like, I don't know, I don't want like, I ate a sandwich before I quoted it this time, and now your quote is 20% lower than the next time because I was hungry. Like, do I need to
So
always eat the exact same sandwich before every quote so that I'm always like at the same sugar level? Do I need a calibrated sandwich to calibrate my quotes?
I try to gut check against something like Xometry, where I don't upload every part that I quote to Xometry, but I use that as a good relative measurement. Anytime I'm questioning, did I quote that right? I will upload it to Xometry and compare its price to what I'm doing and see where I fall. Because and over time, like in the beginning, I basically uploaded almost every part I quoted to Xometry just to kind of see what prices it spat out, just so I could kind of get a ballpark range. And now it's what Xometry does, and the reason I like doing it to Xometry is that I can plug in precision features, I can plug in material,
Mm.
I can plug in all that information, and it'll spit out a price, and it allows me to gut check: am I way high, am I way low, or is the way I'm doing it consistent for this style of part? It's not necessarily that I'm looking at Xometry's price and going, I'm trying to match Xometry's price in any particular way, but I have an idea of where I want this part to fall, and where it needs to be, and am I quoting it consistently where it makes sense when I compare it to Xometry? Because Xometry doesn't know everything. I mean, Xometry, they're using an algorithm to come up with their price, and so sometimes that algorithm is just like crazy one way or the other, and like you can't always match it in both directions. You know, sometimes it's way too high and it's like I can never charge my customer that price, and sometimes it's way too low and it's like I can't charge that price, I won't make money. And so like, but it's a good equalizer because it's doing things consistently because it's automated.
Yes, that's fair. That makes sense.
So, and I can look at that and I can go, man, that's what that part is worth on the open market, more or less. It's not a good fit for my company, either on the high side or the low side. So, anyways, it gets a little bit tricky when you get down to like really tight tolerances, because then it has to be manually quoted. And so, like, if I have something with tense callouts, Xometry is not a good fit. So I'll usually set it down to as low as I can get it and still get the automated quote, and then know that it's going to be beyond that a little bit. So, but regardless, I try to keep everything internal, and then I'll quote something and I'll have Weston quote it, and we'll compare that way as well. So I like to cross check as much against as many sources as I can to kind of build up that quoting eye. And I can't usually quote things off the hip. Like I can't look at a part and go, "Oh, that's a $30 part," because I got to sit down and run the numbers, and I got to plug in, okay, materials this and this, because I have found that with my eye, I undervalue things way too much. I way undershoot. If I just,
Yeah, same.
oh, that should be a $30 part, quoted out $60, $70. Ooh, that was a little under. So I've started to learn that I need to sit down and actually run the numbers, because usually what I think it should be is usually a lot. It should be more than what I think it should be. And I think some of that has to do with just the market we're in today. Things are just a lot more expensive. I mean, you look at the groceries and you look at everything around you, everything's going up in price. And
Except use Tormox.
except use Tormox, those are dropping like crazy.
Yeah.
But, and I think it was really like, we got into the job shop space, I think, right in the middle of COVID, and that was a weird time for machining. And like that was one thing I learned on this event, to the Boombastic event. I rode down and caravan with a bunch of people, because it was a local tooling rep that uh, that drove us down and did room and board, which was really nice. So I didn't have to pay for room and board. It was, but I got to rub elbows with a lot of those guys in different industries, and basically COVID was a boom for everyone for the most part, because machining was going crazy. And a lot of shops, I think COVID just bumped the market really hard. And so two things that seem to be going kind of nationwide from what I can tell is that shops are trying, like, manufacturing places are trying to bring their as much of their stuff in house as possible, so they're
Yep.
not outsourcing as much, which is hurting a lot of job shops. And then two, there's been some stuff I keep hearing it on the tax side, where businesses are getting taxed more for inventory that they have on the shelves. And so there's a lot of companies around here that, if they ordered 500 parts at a time, they're now placed, and they'd order it once every 6 months. Now they're ordering, 30 parts once a month or something like that. And for the older style shop, like the one that the buddy of mine, he's only efficient if he's getting 100 plus, 200 plus orders, 100 to 1,000 parts. Anything less than 100 parts, as he says, he doesn't. If it's less than 100 parts, he can't make money on it for the prices that he's selling them for. And so he's got customers that are trying to bring him 30 parts, but they want the same prices when they were ordering 500 parts. And so um, he just can't do that and make money. And so in machining, being agile is going to be what separates, I think, good job shops from great job shops going forward from here on out. And it might get back to that point, but I don't see it going that way.
Yeah, I think also a lot of companies are bringing stuff back from overseas
Mm-hmm.
and bringing it to local U.S. job shops instead of having it made in Far East
Yeah.
Asia.
Which I have heard that from some local customers as well. And there's a few new customers that I might be picking up that have been talking about bringing their manufacturing back into the US. So, I mean, like, people are bringing it in house, people that are doing it overseas are bringing it into the US. So maybe it's a wash, but it definitely sounds like shops are seeing much lower quantities than they're used to seeing. And it's really hitting a lot of companies hard.
Interesting. I haven't heard that. But the kind of stuff I deal with is low quantity anyway. I get a part that's like they want 5 pieces of it, and I'm like, whoa, slow down.
Yeah.
But for you, that's kind of more your bread and butter. Interesting.
Well, I would say my average part size is 10 or less. Like, we
My
don't really
average
have
part count is probably 1.2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I mean, compared to those guys, like, they're up in, like, their average size is like 200 to 300 parts of
Yeah.
one type. And so they just, like, I was talking to one guy, and and he was doing runs of 400 of a part for since 2008, and they're now dropping it to, like, 20 parts orders or something like that, and he's just like, how I can't do that. So
I wonder if any of that is like lean driven, and if lean is getting more popular. And
it might be. There could be something said for that. The thing is, I'm going to play devil's advocate in the sense that, like, yes, lean is about having things just in time, but if you're running that volume of parts and you want to be lean, you need to communicate your lean schedule with your suppliers in a way that they can meet your demand in a smart fashion.
oh,
So
absolutely.
and I don't think any of the shops are doing that. I think they're hearing lean and they're going, "Oh, that just means I need to order the same thing in less quantities and have it due every week or two, or something like that." And then the machine shop that's has 10 machines and is used to doing, "Hey, I'm going to dedicate this machine for a week on this part and a week on that part," and then all of a sudden they got to get the same amount of parts done. They just need one and one and one and one and one, or 10 and 10 and 10, and now they have like 100 different types that all need to be done in a week or two, and they're constantly changing out their machines. They can't make money at that, like the way they've been doing it in the past. And so it's just going to kill a lot of shops if they just drop their quantities like that so fast without communicating. It'd be one thing if the customer was like, "Hey, I need, 10,000 of these parts in a year, and I'm going to be ordering, I'm going to be placing an order of this size at this regular interval," or something along those lines. And then the machine shop can decide, or the vendor can decide, okay, it's more efficient for me to run these in this batch size or this batch size or whatever. And then when I run low, I'll fill my stuff up so I can make sure my customer has parts. Then there's a little bit of inventory management on both sides to stay lean and effective. The problem is when one side is lean and the other side is not, your prices are going to shoot through the roof, and everything that you gained by not having stuff on the shelf, you're going to lose in cost to the machine shop to produce all these single piece items that where they've been used to higher volume.
Yeah. And I don't know, with lean, like there's at least at like the Toyota level, there is a big focus on educating your vendors and working with your vendors. And really, if you're Toyota, beating up on your vendors to get them to do what you want. And when you're Toyota, you can throw that weight around. Smaller companies can't necessarily. No. Though I will still say a lot of the times it is more worth it to pay the higher prices to get the smaller batches.
Yeah, and it might be, but if you're dealing with older shops that are not used to those volumes, like if you've got a customer you've been working with for 80 years and all of a sudden you cut your quantities down by 10% to a tenth of what they used to be and are expecting the same pricing and whatnot, like there's going to be a lot of friction and it's going to cause a lot of problems for everyone involved.
Yeah, you got to communicate.
And so we'll see. It's exciting for us because, like I said, and like you've said, we've only known small quantities. Like we've never really dealt with the insanely large volumes of, like, you know, say 100,000 of a part a year or something or more, which would be awesome. If anyone has 100,000 of anything that they need in a year, let me know.
If it's smaller than a cubic inch, send it to AJ at Audacity Micro. If it's bigger, send it to Harrison.
I'm interested.
PrecisionEngineering.com or something.
Yeah. So. Is that time?
No, it's
is that what that was for?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm tired. I still have to make parts tonight.
Threads. I can't roll my R's.
A challenge we face with our taps and patience we'll ace this race.
We should do a mixtape for our Patreons after the coin.
Yes.
That would be awesome. Like a physical CD or a cassette tape.
A-track. Honestly, a record kind of would go like with that machine shop. Aren't records kind of made like the masters? How do they make the masters?
I think they have a special like record lathe, and then they stamp them.
Could be. I'm dreaming, but that would be kind of cool.
Anyway, outro.
Yep. So, anyways, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. We're both. It's so hard to think what that thing's doing.
This is the downside of outro music with words.
Yes, it is. Thanks for hanging out with us and listening to us ramble. Hopefully, there is a cohesive through line story for this podcast, but there almost never is. For all of our Patreon supporters, we appreciate you guys once again. I know AJ usually does the shout out, but this time I'm going to throw in a little bit and say thanks. For all of those who have been messaging us about what you hear on the podcast, keep them coming. I love hearing feedback on what people hear from, or what people are thinking from our episodes. Sounds like I need to go read some more YouTube comments because I almost never do that. But I appreciate those that reach out to me on Instagram. And anyways, this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Working hard in a little machine shop, tapping threads and turning metals non-stop.
We're totally dropping an album now.
Yep.